Hey everyone, welcome back to Epic Film Sleuth. Today we are going to recap the blend of action and comedy movie, The Family Plan. So let's watch this without wasting any time. Dan is a family man and a great car salesman. But what his family doesn't know is that he was once an assassin. When a mysterious figure starts watching him, his perfect life starts falling into pieces. A simple invasion of privacy soon turns into a dangerous chase. Dan must face his past to protect his wife and kids. As old enemies return and secrets are exposed, the line between a loving father and a cold killer starts to disappear. Can Dan stay one step ahead of his enemies, or will his hidden past ruin everything he loves? Let's see this movie packed with action and love of the family. The movie starts in New York City. We see Dan, who is good at selling cars because he sees the little things others might miss. He once again wins the title of a Salesman of the Month. He has a wife named Jessica and 3 kids, Nina, Kyle, and Max. When Dan and Jessica share a kiss, someone takes a picture of them without permission. The person posts the photo online and starts bothering Dan. Things get worse when the person spills a drink on Dan and bullies his wife in front of him. Dan walks away because he hates violence and fights. His wife Jessica finds a situation in boxing where an accidental punch to her training partner leads to an unexpected friendship, opening up to her new friend Gwen, who is also a travel agent. While shopping, a strange man appears to be watching Dan, cautiously drawing Dan's attention. Dan is quick to react when the man moves into attack. The locals are surprised, and even his neighbors notice something different about Dan. At home, Dan opens up a secret compartment containing guns, outdated passports, and lots of cash packed. Dan contacts Augie, a former associate, to arrange new identities for his family, indicating they're in danger. Augie suspects that the threat comes from Dan's old boss, and his name is McCaffrey. He advises Dan to disappear as soon as possible. It turns out Dan is an ex-killer. He has kept it a secret from his family. Dan seeks out Nina at an editorial meeting, but when he reaches there, he discovers that she quit 3 months ago. After a small incentive, her friends sold her out. He finds Nina under the bleachers, upset that she abandoned her dream, but there's no time to be sad about this as they need to collect her brother from the chess club. But rather, Dan is disappointed to find him at their neighbor's house along with his gaming equipment. Dan tells his kids that they are going to Vegas. In the middle of Jessica's work, Dan persuades her to go on the trip she so much desired for years. But as they are about to leave the parking area, there are McCaffrey's men already waiting for them. Dan evades them, but a moment later they catch up to Dan, but he still manages to roam around the city without his family suspecting a thing. Dan drives into his workplace and closes the gates on those men, but he then lifts the car up and finds the tracker, which he hides. Just in time for the men to miss him in his car. The family members are still unaware of the situation. Dan attaches the tracker to his colleague's car and tells him to move around on the highway. To remain hidden, Dan seizes everyone's phones. At the travel agency, the clerk locates maps for their route. Meanwhile, McCaffrey personally visits Dan's house and is certain that his family is still unaware of the situation. At the same time, while talking with his sister, a stranger recognizes Kyle from his online streaming career and asks for a selfie. Hey, if you are enjoying this video, make sure you subscribe and press the notification icon so you don't miss future videos from my channel. Enjoy! Dan notices Kyle and the girl capturing selfies, and he anticipates McCaffrey's approaching. To remain hidden, he continues driving to avoid detection. McCaffrey has recruited additional men to pursue Dan, and he briefly catches sight of 3 of them. While his family is asleep, he prepares to use lethal force by turning on music on all of their headphones. Despite being shot in the mirror, he manages to remove one, narrowly avoiding a crash and bumping into one of them. After driving all night, Dan finally closes his eyes, but his family is awake. Half a mile away from the college that Nina wanted to attend, she argues her way into seeing it. Jessica even proudly displays her keg stand skills. The main reason Nina wanted to visit the college campus was because of her boyfriend Trevor. He was on a campus tour. Dan notices a man talking on his phone, and he knows that he could be a McCaffrey operator here. However, he realizes his mistake when a different individual unexpectedly attacks him. Dan manages to tackle the killer and quickly returns to his family to continue his journey in the school. Meanwhile, Nina visits Trevor and she finds out that he is cheating on her. She returns crying, and Dan teaches her a martial art technique, and later Dan talks to Augie, who is on his way to deliver Dan's and his family's new identities. Later, Kyle joins him, and they finally finally discuss his career as an online streamer, Kyle is eager to demonstrate his skills by competing in a laser tag game with Dan. They initially placed a wager on achieving 3 kills. As an ex-assassin, Dan has an easy time securing the first and second tags. Kyle, on the other hand, revenge with 2 of his own, but Dan secures the final tag. In Las Vegas, they are staying in a luxury suite. Dan meets with Augie, who hands him their new identities and a one-way ticket to Vancouver. Dan prepares himself to tell Jessica the truth over a romantic dinner. While the kids babysit their young daughter, McCaffrey's men are already aware of Dan's location. Kyle visits the gaming arena, but McCaffrey's men are there as well. While Nina gets comfortable with one of the gamers who gave his spot to Kyle, Kyle is single-handedly destroying the enemy team. Dan tries to tell Jessica the truth, but every moment he tries to tell her, he is interrupted by someone. He decides to postpone it a bit more and go to a gambling bar with her, but after a while, he decides to check up on the kids he calls home, but his call goes unanswered, so they head home. There were dummies on the bed to trick Jessica into believing the kids were sleeping. Jessica goes to freshen up and puts on some romantic music. That's exactly when McCaffrey's men strike them. Dan throws vodka and shoots it, setting the men on fire and stopping them, but Jessica is taken hostage by them. Dan puts down his gun but slightly grabs a knife while the guy is gossiping. Dan killed him as well. Jessica runs to the kids' room, but she finds out the dummies. She understands that they need to search in a hurry, given Kyle's constant mention of it. Kyle manages to finish the game with 30 kills. Just as the game ends, their parents arrive and pick them up. Dan reveals to his family that he's a hidden assassin and his ex-colleagues are here to kill him, but the kids don't believe it until they are shot at. Dan stopped the killer, a girl, as they attempted to take the cover behind a car, but her vest kept her alive, prompting them to fire another quick round. Dan finally revealed his history of being McCaffrey's hitman and that he killed 42 people. Now they understand why Dan never wanted to leave the city and was also against social media, so he hands them their new identities. Nina now assumes the role of Molly, while Kyle adopts the personality of Van. The family refuses to accept him. Jessica trusts him with the children's care. She reaches out to Gwen for assistance, leaving Dan to stand guard outside until dawn. Despite Dan's attempts to clarify that it's unsafe for them, McCaffrey follows Jessica and simply instructs him to ensure safety and avoid any potential danger. When Jessica arrives, she discovers that Gwen is a powerful woman. Suddenly, Gwen is talking about her ex, who made a whole new life with an intolerable woman. As a result, she made friends with the woman and waited for her to walk into her trap. McCaffrey is here. He unexpectedly calls Dan. He reveals that his family is in custody. He arranges a meeting in an abandoned hotel. McCaffrey's assistants are all over the place when arriving at the penthouse. It turns out that McCaffrey is Dan's father. McCaffrey wanted Dan dead because he abandoned him, but for the past few days, Dan killed every man McCaffrey sent at him. His father wants him back. If he refuses, he will not let his family go. Dan agrees to do it. Dan's kid wants Jessica to protect Dan, even though they want to cut ties. The kids try to convince their mother that they can't abandon their father. Jessica begins changing Max's diaper, stuffing it in the bad guy's face, and sending him off to his death. They go to get Dan back while McCaffrey goes to make some arrangements. Gwen tries to seduce Dan, but he knows her tactics. The family is there to rescue him as he puts Gwen to sleep. Dan apologizes for keeping secrets from Jessica and promises to always tell her the truth. McCaffrey notices that something is wrong. The guards are approaching, so Dan insists his family head to the roof where he will handle their situation. Kyle uses the drone to spot McCaffrey's men and give information to Dan, who skillfully deals with them. McCaffrey notices that the drone is helping Dan, and he wakes Gwen up to find the family. Dan tells his dad to call it off, but he doesn't listen. Jessica protects the children and fires as the elevator arrives while Gwen remains relaxed on the left side. Kyle says there are 9 guys left. Dan dismisses them one by one. McCaffrey finally shoots down the drone, and during the prolonged fight, Gwen becomes victorious. McCaffrey knocks Dan down, giving him a clear shot at him. Gwen corners the kids, giving Jessica the strength to lift the heavy concrete. Dan manages to get bullets out of McCaffrey's gun, so they resort to stick-to-hand combat, gathering her inner strength. Jessica picks up a bamboo stick and goes for an athletic jump, but fails. Jessica tries again and she successfully hits her. McCaffrey beats Dan in a fight and grabs a gun to finish him off. However, the family enters and Nina tells Dan they still care about him. Then Dan kills McCaffrey and the family gets back together. Thank you for watching. If you want to enjoy more recaps like this one, hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to like and share the recap of this awesome movie. We'll see you in the next. Take care.